Warning, mature content ahead. You are now entering the Atomic Nerd Alert. Hello to all of you nerds out there.
Hi.
In the netosphere, the randomness of your homes where you are going stir crazy, where you are in the middle of a Hulu or Netflix rabbit hole.
Or, Disney Plus as well.
Disney Plus, whatever your streaming platforms are. It is I, your overlord of Dorkasaur, Jordan, and again I am here with my sister, the straighty of the Dorky Weirds.
Yes.
Holly.
Hello.
So, last time we talked a little bit about Birds of Prey.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of this epidemic crisis, you need just a little bit more help,
Yes.
Money
Some form of sanity
is tight. Sanity is out the door. You don't know where it's going. You need a little bit of mead, and you need to toss a coin to your witcher. Oh, value plenty. Oh, value plenty. Whoa.
Yes, we are going to be talking about The Witcher this episode.
Season 1.
Yes.
For this, because I have read the books, I am going to break it up. You think we should break it up per episodes?
Yeah, we should do that. So we'll probably do episodes 1 and 2 with this episode.
Yes.
And then the next episode, 3 and 4, so on and so forth. So we have a total of 4 episodes.
Right.
For this little mini series that we're doing.
That way I can break it down for all of you lovely, lovely listeners out there. Some of you have already read the books. Some of this is really redundant because 1,000,001 channels have already talked about The Witcher Season 1 and all the differences from the books and their thoughts and everything. And the ones that have read the books, a lot of them don't really care for it. It's about split 50-50, I would say. Those that haven't read the books, it's like with Game of Thrones. It keeps getting compared to Game of Thrones. When it's not Game of Thrones, it's so much better.
Oh, yes.
I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for that, but I don't care. The Witcher is a hell of a lot better than Game of Thrones by far.
In this day and age, from when Game of Thrones first started back in the early...
When George R. Martin still had.
10s or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's a little better than
when he still had it, because we needed a breath of fresh air after that last diabolical season of Game of Thrones. But that is another can of worms that we won't get into right now, because it's all about The Witcher.
Yeah.
So with episode 1 was the end's beginning. What did you think about it so far?
Episode 1, I really thought was really, really good. Especially, and we will be going into spoiler territory for those who haven't been seeing the show. So just kind of
spoilers.
Yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. There are going to be probably a lot of spoilers. I thought that the scenery where they shot a lot of the episodes was fantastic. Choreography, fantastic.
The fight choreo was just...
yeah. And not just that, but also casting choice. I personally liked the casting choices.
Oh, yeah.
Both Jordan and I agree. Henry Cavill was born to play Geralt of Rivia.
He was. At first, I was apprehensive about it.
Right.
Because I'm like... Ooh, Superman as the Witcher. I don't know about this.
Especially when they first released that first initial test shot
with the test looks.
Yeah.
For he looked like a discount Legolas.
Yeah.
Like he looked like Legolas was a Chanel to Henry Cavill's Walmart, and now how the tables have turned.
Oh yes.
Toss a coin to your thirsty bitches out there who want the value penis. As the Yaskir Dandelion tends to say.
Yeah, there was a lot of people who were given backlash about
Yaskir's
name.
Yeah.
Because in the games, they're so used to hearing dandelion.
In the books, in the English translations, it's also dandelion,
Yes.
but it's because Yaskir means a little yellow flower. Dandelion is a little yellow flower.
Exactly.
There wasn't a perfect translation because these were originally Polish to begin with, which was really nice that it's translated, I believe, into like 47 different languages for the books. Wow. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so people all over the world are just craving some gory goodness, which
Especially
episode 1 was super gory. At first, it was kind of boring a little bit because it was so much like walk and talk sort of thing until
I think a lot of
end.
people had a hard time getting into it because they were so used to the gameplay where it's just action, 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 action.
Right.
And then when the show started, it's all building up to that action, which I actually like the build up to the action, especially with stories like this.
Yeah. So like with this story, it was originally from the story from The Last Witch. The Last Witcher. Yeah, no, it was The Last Wish was the story that was the very first one of the short stories that Andrzej Sapkowski, I don't know how to pronounce it. I've heard Andrew, I've heard Andre, but Mr. Sapkowski, whichever one, it was the story of The Lesser Evil, which was about the Butcher of Blaviken, which something I absolutely loved with the story, which I was a little disappointed in the show that they didn't incorporate and embellish on, was that Sapkowski's first short stories were all based off of old fairy tales, like Aesop's Fables, Grimm's Fables. This one was based off of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves.
Yes, I did notice that because when you were reading the books, you were telling me about it. And when you would read a certain section of the book off to me, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Like he...
Yeah.
In that major fucking phenomenal battle that he had at the end, that was like, whoa, this is gory as shit. With that end battle, he did fight off 7 guys, because Renfrey used to run around with 7 dwarves, and they all punked out, or they all were murdered in some capacity.
Right.
She's like, I have no time for weakness. Get out of my sight, or I'm gonna run you through. And they're like, deuces, lady. So she ended up getting another merry band of delinquents that decided, hey, this is a perfect opportunity to get some money with this unsuspecting lady, because we can play the damsel in distress and while on the road to kill people. But anyway, there was a lot of changes in the books to the show. So when you first initially see Geralt, he's riding in, actually he's killing Kikimora, and that was something that was really, really interesting to watch, with the killing of the Kikimora and how they were going to create it. Though I do have to say he had like an orgasm face at the beginning with that sword out of it. Like just looking at the trailers and everything. But along with that, just seeing like the Kikimora in the books, he was riding along on a donkey. He didn't have Roach just yet.
Oh, it was a donkey at first?
Yeah, it was a donkey that he was riding along into Blaviken with, because he's done trading routes with Blaviken before. And he was seeing the older man named Kettleman, I believe it was. Kettlemien. I may be butchering that. I'm just going to call him Kettleman, or the Alderman.
I'd just stick with Alderman.
Yeah. So the Alderman's like, hey, Kikimora was kind of helping us with keeping raiders out on bay and everything. We don't have money for you. Let's go to this tower where we have a new wizard in town. He might have use for it. So Geralt's like, okay, all right, let's take him along with us and see what we can do, see what kind of price he can give us. In the show at that time, it was a little girl that killed her dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like the alderman's daughter or something in the show, and she was like, hey, I killed my dog, and he gave me a fair price for this, so we're gonna go and get that. Instead, later, he met up with the wizard. The wizard didn't want to let them in. He noticed it was a familiar voice on the other end, so Geralt was allowed to go in. Stregobor knew Geralt from beforehand.
Okay.
It wasn't like a first initial meeting. I know they did the creative liberty with that with the show because it's the first time the audience is seeing it, and Sapkowski has said adaptation is adaptation, so I'm not mad at that.
Right.
Mostly, I'm not mad at the show at all. But with the changes, he wanted him to kill Renfrey. He was running away from this girl that he didn't want to kill in the first place, but he had to send her off and kill her some way because of the curse of the Black Sun, which is a bunch of little girls were cursed. It's kind of like a Kingdom Hearts sort of way with like the princesses.
Yeah, I noticed that when he was talking about that with Geralt in that scene about the Black Sun, and Geralt's like, an eclipse. What's the big deal about an eclipse?
Yeah,
it was that look on his face.
Some sort of Mercury is in retrograde sort of thing. All these girls that Mercury was in retrograde, they're all going to murder your faces off. Which they have like some of that within the games as well. But with this, he wanted Renfrey to leave him alone at least, to scare him off or kill her, so that way he can like dissect her and everything to make sure like what was going on with the Black Sun. And Geralt's like, I'm not just gonna randomly kill some freaking girls somewhere.
Yeah.
And
he's got morals.
He does. His morals are he kills who he deems is a monster.
Exactly.
Be it human or actual monster, but he doesn't really kill.
He doesn't kill to kill.
Yeah, because he has like two swords strapped to his back. One is the silver sword is for monsters, and the iron is for humans, which he can't differentiate which one is the real monster, especially when they're intelligence.
Right.
But so long story short, the TLDR, Renfrey met them up in the bar, in the tavern, and Geralt got a room in there. The alderman's like, hey, this is cool. Stay here for as long as you like, because, you know, our dude likes you. And he's like, so I am going to have to run somebody out of town or kill somebody, but I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to do that and stay here. And the alderman's like, you're not killing anybody. No way. No how. You're not killing anyone around here. And a bunch of guys were coming up, giving Geralt a bunch of shit. And Renfrey's like, hey, none of that. Hey, hi. How are you doing, Mr. Witcher man? So, let's hang out for a little bit in my tables and such.
And talk.
Yeah, and she just wanted to talk, and she was telling him about Stregobor and how he was hunting her down, and she was wanting revenge, and Geralt's saying revenge doesn't really work out well.
No.
But later, he's in his attic room, and she's like, well, if you don't bring out Stregobor to us or have us be able to go into his tower to kill him, we're going to wipe out everybody here to draw him out. We don't want you involved in this because you don't want to be involved. You shouldn't be involved.
Pretty much she was giving Geralt an ultimatum.
Yeah, pretty much she gave Geralt an ultimatum, like how they did in the show. And Geralt's like, well, I'm not going to let you kill everybody. I will defend them.
Right.
If you end up starting to massacre random people in the middle of the street in a market. And later, she ended up doing the do, seducing the man.
Yeah.
Because he goes down and dirty with his carnal urges all the time. He doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is or anything, but she reminded him too much of Yennefer.
Right.
And so he's like, all right, okay.
Let's do this!
Let's do this. Let's do the horizontal cha-cha slide with this this little broad here. And she ended up falling asleep in his arms. And when he woke up, she was gone. Goes into the market. The men in there are starting to massacre people. Strigobor's still refusing to come out of his place, and Geralt's like, well, I've had enough of this shit, and just starts killing all of her men, leaving to fight her, saying, I don't want to fight you.
Right.
Just like with the show there.
Yeah.
And kills him.
But
she kills...
the one difference there with the beginning of that fight scene in the town, they're not killing any of the villagers.
No.
That's the difference there. It's like they try to stop Geralt and try to kill him, and he's like, fuck this, I'm gonna take you out.
Yeah. So, like, with that, Geralt was forced to kill Renfri, and Strigobor and Geralt both were told by the older men to leave and never come back. Because you're not... We don't need you here. We don't need this sort of thing. And Geralt was deemed as the Butcher Blaviken afterward.
Right. And in the show, at the end of that fight scene, you see Strigobor, like, so fascinated over Renfri and looking at her dead body and was like, fascinating.
Yeah, he wanted to do
I need to do an autopsy.
Yeah.
And Geralt's like,
you're not touching her.
Do not touch a hair on her head or body. You gonna die.
Yeah. So that's basically what happened in that story. There was a lot of differences in the show, creative freedoms. Like with Ciri's line, that entire thing was fabricated just to introduce Ciri, which that started giving a little bit of issue with the timeline because people thought it was around the same timeline as well.
Correct. But there's 3 different timelines?
Yes.
So
Yennefer's is in the very, very distant past.
Right.
Geralt's in the recent past, and Ciri's is in the now.
Right.
So that's something that really threw people. But in that first season, I at least liked that because it was jumping around, just like with the first 2 books with Sword of Destiny and The Last Witch. Those 2 were all anthologies of short stories, and they were jumping around in periods of time. So it was more reminiscent. It was a lot more reminiscent of that. My phone just went off, sorry.
Emails.
Yeah, emails, lots of emails. But that was the truth of what happened in the books of the first season. How are you feeling from the differences?
I think they tried to get as close as they possibly could with the time crunch that they had to film, plus the budget they had to film. Because if they tried to do shot for shot, scene for scene, exactly like within the books, it would have been much longer, much more progressed, and they would have been way over budget for filming season 1 entirely.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go in a little bit on what actually happened in the books with episode 2 as well, with 4 marks, and then we'll get into a little bit more of like the what our initial thoughts were, me from a book reader's point of view, what I thought, and versus what you were thinking on that.
Right.
So with episode 2 was 4 marks. We go into seeing Yennefer for the first time. She's a hunchback at this time, and her dad was the shittiest piece of shit, or both of her parents really were. But in the books, you don't really see that at all. You just see like what she's spoken about herself and what Geralt's noticed. Because magic users, they are morphed in some capacity, because most of the magic users that are brought into Aretusa, they have some sort of deformity growing up. So a lot of them were originally hunchbacks. Some of them have like clubbed feet. Some of them have like the cleft palate. Just people that were back in that day would have been like thrown into a well if they were shown to have any sort of
Deformity,
or if they showed any form of being able to be a magic user. The rectresses of Aretusa would swoop in and save them from that life. But with that, Yen's story mostly was talked about with like Istrid with Shard of Ice, how Istrid came to be. It was in the original books with Shard of Ice. Geralt met Istrid, who was her ex, her on-again, off-again wizard ex that she would bang. She went to this town, I forget what it was called, but in Elvish, but it translates into Shard of Ice. In this area, it's like desert place. It used to be like frozen over, really beautiful, but it was taken over. But in this, she went with Geralt to hang out and to live with them for a little bit. It was when they were good, but they were like starting to get on the outs with their on-again, off-again relationship. She went to this place because she knew that Istrid was going to be there, so she was going to be banging both Geralt and Istrid at the same time. Not together, but one after the other. And Geralt and Istrid were going back and forth, and Geralt's like, well, she was sleeping with me last night. And he was like, then why was she just here? And like, they were doing the horizontal cha-cha slide there too. It was a mess. And Istrid wanted to marry Yen. He was saying that it was his time to get married to her. And that he used to be with her back when she was not what anybody else wanted, and so Geralt could never have her, and they were about to fight to the death for Yennefer. Istrid was literally like, okay, to the death, and Geralt's like, fine, whatever, to the death. So with them introducing Istrid like that, it was kind of interesting seeing the actual back in the day portion of when they were just starting out, and when he fell for her, not because of her looks, but because of her
who she was as a person.
Who she was as a person, like not just like her magical power, but her feminine power and anything and everything about her. That said, that was part of Yen's story. I will go a little bit into the magic here in a second, but with the other part that was going on with the story. The TLDR is that they were at the edge of the world with the toss a coin to your witcher. That part, Dandelion already knew Geralt, and they were already traveling for quite some time. This is the story called Edge of the World from The Last Wish. And Julian Alfred Pancrans Viscount de Littenhove, also known as Dandelion or Jaskier. He was just traveling with Geralt, just being a dick, you know, making jokes, making songs, doing his thing. And
like bards always do.
They were explaining to this alderman that he's a witcher and he needs money because they were broke and they were hungry and they needed food and they were going to be thrown out. So Geralt is like, I'm a witcher. This is what I do. I kill things. And this one guy comes up and he's like, we have a devil. It's a devil. I don't know why this devil is throwing balls at everybody, but anytime somebody comes by, he's stealing our grain, and it's this devil. And when I'm reading this, I'm just laughing my ass off because Geralt takes the contract. He's like, all right, it's a good sizable amount of coin, so I'll get rid of your devil for you. Then go, and this thing is braying like a horse. They're going, yeah, it's weird. So it's a Sylvan is what it is. They have like horse claws, hooves, horse teeth. But they also look like a goat, and they have two horns, and some of them are like really, really, really big. really tall.
So you're saying in the book they describe the Sylvan as a cross between goat, human, horse?
Yes. Like a satyr fucked a giant. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So this
Quite the
thing was
picture.
like, leave me alone, and throwing iron balls at them. And Dandelion was laughing and making jokes at him. And
Oh, no.
And he was like, oh, you're a joker, eh? I'll throw these balls at you. I'll show you balls. If you want to see my balls, here's my balls. And just like throwing all these, and they had to run away. And they ended up going back into the tavern, and the alderman's like, hey, so let's talk to some of our village elders, because they have dealt with different things throughout everything, from back in the day to now. So they did, and they met a mute girl. Let's see, what was her name? I have it written down here. Lil. Lille. Lily, or Lil. She was just walking around, and the guys were like trying to get with her and everything, and the village elders were like, leave him alone, just go fight the devil and get rid of him. And Lil was just watching Geralt, just kept watching him. So they go back to fight the devil, the Sylvan. The Sylvan was named Torque, and they got ambushed by a bunch of elves, and it was Filavandrel's elves.
Ooh.
Filavandrel is one of the Enshade, which is the sage elves, one of the last of the kind. During where they're at with Dol Blathana, that was a elven territory that was taken over after an elven human fight on the continent. The continent is what they call the Witcher world.
Okay.
So he was trying to get food back for his people, and there was no way that they could. And Geralt's like, hey, I don't want to kill this guy because he's an intelligent Sylvan. I don't want to kill you guys. That's not my style. So why don't you just like learn to coexist or something? And Geralt's just going back and forth with Filavandrel, and in walks Lil. All of them immediately start bowing to her. She is, yeah, I know that's really weird, but yeah, she was known as the Lady of the Fields. She was like this elven goddess.
Like a higher power than
Yeah,
Filavandrel?
she's one of the Enshade, like one of the very first Enshade elves.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So, she was telepathically telling them, you need to calm down. Let him go. He doesn't want to kill you. Just let him leave. Nothing got really resolved there. And Dandelion was still pissed off because his lute got snapped in half.
Oh, the loot.
But the Lady of the Fields gave him one of the best lutes. It was like an equivalency of like Pan's lute. Not Pan. Is it Pan? Pan had the lute? No.
No.
What was his name?
Pan had the flute.
Pan had the
in
flute.
Greek mythology.
But who had the lute?
Oh. Orpheus.
Orpheus. Okay, so it was like Orpheus's lute that was given to Dandelion at that point.
Okay.
And they just walked away, and they're like, well, let's go find some more food somewhere else. And that was pretty much it.
That is totally different than what they did with the show, introducing that. Jaskier didn't know Geralt in the show at all. And then he's singing about...
Tossing coins to your witcher?
That's before. Well,
No, that's after.
After, excuse me. The one before was like, he was talking about, and...
Oh, Nan the hag
Yes, and...
can brew up a potion so that your lady might get an abortion.
And then a villager said, abort yourself.
Jaskier's music just I know that the Witcher, the production and everything already released like a lot of Jaskier's songs.
Right.
But we
It's
just
also
need a full freaking album of Jaskier's.
And the score, as well as the songs that the actor who played Jaskier actually sings, they are on
Joe.
Spotify. So if you want to go give that a listen, just type it up in Spotify. I think it's also on Pandora for those who also just
I think you can
use
also
Pandora
like, get
stream.
it on
They do have it on
iTunes
YouTube
now or something too.
I don't know about
I'm not
iTunes.
100%, but
But I
if
know
you
they
really
did
like the
release it
music-
on YouTube as well. So if you don't have either of the music streaming platforms, you can at least, look it up on YouTube. But the first scene, Jaskier is picking up bread and shoving it in his pants. Or
You're told to keep
pantaloons.
a man with bread in his pants waiting.
And then he sees Geralt sitting there alone. Like he always is, a loner. And he goes over and he's like, so, how was my singing?
At least it's not billingless pie.
That's in a later episode.
That's
Come
later,
on.
yeah.
Stop giving that one away right now.
Yeah.
But the whole scene with the Sylvan and Philivandrel and his gang, pretty much, in that specific scene, they didn't show the mute girl at all.
Yeah.
Which I know you were a little disappointed in that because
Yeah.
you're like, why didn't they show one of the higher first of the elves?
To be fair, when they were showing Philivandrel and his elf lady with the Sylvan, the CG wasn't the best, but that was also due to budget with the Sylvan.
Right.
But with the elves themselves, they felt more like humans instead of more ethereal like the elves are in the books. Especially for an Endshade. Like, they felt more like half-elves.
Right, I noticed that too, because we're also beginners on D&D with half-elves, and we noticed that the elves in this seem more like the half-elves with, like, Dungeons & Dragons. So that was kind of like a, is this really supposed to be what the elves are to look like? Or is it, are they supposed to look a little more magical, angelic, ethereal?
Yeah, especially with, like, the Endshade elves. They're meant to be a little bit more like the Legolas sort of elves.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I heard, too, from others. But also, the banter between Geralt and the Sylvan.
Yeah.
What did your motherfucker goat? What did your motherfucker snowman?
They had to add, like, some sort of banter because in the
Hilarious banter.
In the books, they also had banter between Dandelion and Torque. And it was you want my balls? I'll show you my balls. Here's your balls right here. Yeah.
And yes, Jaskier's loot did break.
Snapped in half.
It got stomped on in that scene.
Snapped and stomped on.
He's like, leave the bard's loot alone. He's just a bard. Let him go.
Now, okay, so with that, did you pick up on any of the continuity errors at all? Like with the magic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were trying to do like a give and take. Like magic is you give and it takes. But from what I remember you telling me about the magic in the books, it's supposed to be like the Force, kind of like with Star Wars.
Yeah, like in the English translations of the books, I believe it was in the Time of Contempt when Ciri was talking with Yen about learning how to harness power and everything. She kept saying the Force, the Force, the Force. It's very similar to Star Wars's Force, where there's like the veins in the world, and you can tap those power sources. That's where it came from. That's something that I did like about like with the games as well, is they kept
it with the Force.
They kept it with the Force and with tapping the power sources and the power stones and everything. But in the games. Not the game, sorry. In the
shows, they call it chaos.
Yeah, chaos in the show when it's not really chaos. And it's felt more like a Full Metal Alchemist sort of
Right,
give and
like
take
how
with that, but like not all of them were doing the give and take with the magic. Like here's the rectress Tessiah DeVries turning girls into slugs or eels or something.
They're eels.
And she didn't like wither her hands or anything. Like it was just like bloop, there you go, which that didn't happen in the books either. They just let him go home or let him do what they needed to do or walk into a forest to die or something. It's it's a pretty brutal book series.
Now, what about how in the magic school?
Aretusa?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. It had Frangilla in Aretusa.
See, I'm not mad at that either because
Yes, it introduces her.
Yeah, I wanted to like introduce like who all these people are, especially because she has like a big part to play in the Battle of Sodden Hill at the in the books. But that's never actually shown with the Battle of Sodden Hill, and with her, she was never in Aretusa because she's Nilfgaardian.
But did you like that they had her in Aretusa in the show, or did you think it was a little wonky, that it shouldn't have happened, that it should have been more so towards the book, that she just stayed in Nilfgaard?
I don't think everything should be according to the book, because definitely with like the Witcher games, or not everything is left up to the books. Mm-hmm. But with just like introducing random people, it's how are you going to introduce them, and instead of especially with like key players, if you're wanting like almost the full cast, because we didn't see Papa Vesemir just yet.
No, not yet.
But if you're wanting to like introduce them in some sort of way, like fill up bodies in this space with who will become the Lodge of Sorceresses later on, because Fringilla does become one of the Lodge of Sorceresses. I can see how they set up that with Aretusa. So I'm not really mad at that there, but it still kind of like felt a little out of place because the ladies of Nilfgaard never knew about Aretusa. Like they were in their own little bubble. It was kind of like a communist compound where it was kind of like a Russia or something like that versus like a Rotary or something where all these other places would allow people to go in and study abroad and such, sort of, if you're like linking it towards our era and everything. Not saying that people from East Germany back in like the 80s or like Russia back in
Nothing
the 80s
like
or
that.
something like that wasn't allowed to have like a foreign exchange program or anything like that, but it just wasn't as much sense with that. But for the sake of the actual show, looking at what they were going for with like, these are the key players like Sabrina and Yennefer. We didn't see Triss just yet, but Triss is also there. We didn't also see Philippa Eilhart. But seeing like those ladies like growing up to become members of the Lodge of Sorceresses, that was, I see how they were like setting that up.
Okay.
Yeah. So speaking of Nilfgaard, we do have to talk about the controversial
armor,
which looks like a burnt scrotum.
The design for that armor, whoever came up with the design for it for the show, you did not do a good job.
No, they definitely did not screen test that well enough.
No. It just looks like a bunch of fabric piled up to look like a male body part.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I see what they were going for with it not being great armor to start off with, because during that time, Nilfgaard wasn't the powerhouse that it is now. It's not the empire that it is now.
Correct. But
at the same time,
they still could have done better.
I mean, if you're trying to make them look like dicks, you did a good job. Because, like, nobody likes Nilfgaard. But Nilfgaard's not really Nilfgaard is kind of like the big bully, but they're not the big bully. It's very ambiguous, but right now we're set up to hate Nilfgaard.
Right. Definitely.
just because of the lens and the scope that we're going through with seeing from like the 3 different points of view at the time. That, and then also the smiley face sword that Geralt has after he gets Renfri's brooch.
It was just about every time you see the brooch that Renfri gave Geralt, like as a goodbye present, so to speak, when he found her gone when he woke up from their rendezvous. Every time you see it on the sword now, it's either right side up where it looks like a smile or upside down where it looks like a frown.
Could you say she tossed a coin to her witcher?
It's not coin shape.
No, it's not coin shape. It's shaped as a smiley face, like me love you long time. Me haunt you in your dreams because you murdered me. But she paid him. Geralt's a whore now.
Well, I mean, he did, with the one whore in the brothel.
I mean, if you're like, sorry, Christy, if you're like my counterpart, Christina, who spends time in the brothel
every time constantly
she plays the game, it gives me XP. It doesn't do that anymore.
Nope. She was upset when they took that perk away.
But it makes sense because Geralt was also known as a man whore, and he would sleep with people just because, they wanted to sleep with them. And he's like, all right.
You want to go? Let's go.
Yeah. So that made sense there. Another thing that people had a lot of issue with was the casting choices for the main 3. We will talk about Triss a little bit, like in the next one.
The next episode.
For the main 3 with Freya, Henry, and Anya.
See, I really liked Freya as Ciri. I thought she did a phenomenal job. And this was like, what, her first breakthrough?
Yeah, that's not like on stage or anything. That's the same with like Anya Charlatra.
I honestly didn't know how to react to Anya as Yennefer, but the more we progressed with the show, and yes, we have watched it, and we rewatched and rewatched and rewatched.
I think we've watched the show at least 15 times now.
Close. I
just love
the
picture.
The more we actually just sat and watched Anya as Yennefer, the more I actually do like her playing Yennefer.
I feel like she is Yen. Like, I can see like a lot of the backlash, which is very valid, because Yen is this enigma. Mostly, she's like known as the horsewoman of death. Nobody really knows too much about her, and the only thing you do is just like in passing and mention, like Geralt noticing that her nose is slightly crooked and her mouth was like slightly drooped this way, and how he realizes that the way she holds her body as well is like she still has a hump there or something. So it's like that's the clues that they had for him, for Yen being like a hunchback. And the Lady of the Lake, she's captured. I'm not gonna go into how or anything because that's spoiler territory, especially for the show, because that's like the tail ending of the show, the series of what's gonna happen. But it does show like with her parents and how they were, how they reacted, and
right, and
that she had slits on her wrists, like healed slits on her wrists and everything, that was from like the first initial meeting with her before the Witcher logo came up with her, with the suicide attempt.
Right, and I thought that they played that really well, honestly.
Yeah, they didn't they showed it, but they didn't show it like a 13 Reasons Why, which was now blocked. That part was taken out.
Yeah, with good reason, honestly.
Very much so.
But I like that they showed that she did attempt to kill herself, but they didn't actually show it.
Yeah.
So there's a whole thing, especially also in creative writing, where
less is more.
Exactly, less is more. And when you show it, you can show it in just mere words, and you lead up to that scene and people will understand, oh, she punched the mirror, she picked up a piece, and oh, okay, so she did do that.
Yeah, because the next thing you see is her waking
her arms bandaged from where she cut her wrists.
And then Tissaia de Vries coming in, being like, you were losing the power, which I kind of find that funny, because spoiler for the other, she does end up killing herself, Tissaia, in the books. I won't say how or why, but she does do that. It was one of those situations of like, at the beginning with Sintra, the sacking of Sintra, where it was either kill or be killed. Don't let yourself fall into enemy hands sort of situation.
Right.
But something else that I really liked about Tissaia de Vries is she might sound familiar if you are a game player, especially with the DLCs.
Yes.
Tissaia, Mayanna Buring, she is also known as Lady Anna Henrietta, Duchess of Toussaint.
Yes. And for those of you who don't really know who she is, one of her other big shows that she was in, the actress, was also, what was that?
IMDb it.
Oh, crap.
IMDb it, Holly.
Quickly. It was,
I got the IMDb up.
It's on the tip of my tongue. Ripper Street. Ripper Street. That's it. Hello. Ripper Street. She was the madam in Ripper Street. And then you see her as pretty much...
Yeah, Long Susan.
Pretty much reprising the madam role as a different form of madam. A rectoress.
Oh, she was also in Breaking Dawn. Oh, honey, no.
Oh,
honey, no.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
As soon as you said Breaking Dawn, I'm like...
And in Witchville.
What?
Yeah.
But no, back to casting choices. A lot of people were also giving backlash to Henry Cavill being casted as Geralt. Mm-hmm. And they actually wanted one of the amazing cosplayers out there, Maul Cosplay, to play Geralt for the TV show.
It's mostly because he looks more like Geralt from the
That's the thing.
games.
They wanted more gamer
and also
looking.
with the facial hair too. Geralt hated facial hair.
Yeah, I mean he will.
He couldn't stand the feeling of facial hair on him.
I mean, but like in the show, it could lead up. Yeah, I had it, shaved it off. I mean, he could just.
No, he never had facial hair in the books.
Oh, in the books, he never had it.
He never had facial hair in the books.
Oh well,
it was
then
just
there you
added
go.
in
It's
from,
only in the games that he had the facial
CD
hair.
Projekt Red. Yeah.
Only in the games.
Yeah,
but
which
no.
Yen addressed that in the games as well. Like, oh, you grew out your beard. I wonder why you did that.
Yeah,
it suits you.
But yeah, that was one thing that I heard throughout all the social media platforms I'm on that has him in it. So many people kept commenting, why didn't you audition to play Geralt? Why didn't you audition to play Geralt for the show? It's like, I didn't know they were doing a show. And when I did, I wasn't thinking about it. Did I just do cosplay? I'm a stuntman.
I think that it was like under a different name as well, like Witchman or something, which is very similar to like the Polish with Davidsman.
And that could be too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think that Maul Cosplay is really good when it comes to photo shoots for that.
Right.
And he could have been a very good if he decided to do this. But I honestly like Henry Cavill as the Witcher. Like, he was born to play this role.
I mean, to be fair, he was also one of the cast that actually read the entire book series and played all 3 of the Witcher games.
Yes. So they did get a gamer.
They did get a gamer. Yeah. He was saying in like a couple interviews that he played mostly with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and that was his
inspiration.
Yeah, that was his inspiration, and he would do the voices for Geralt back in the day because he wanted to play Geralt so bad.
And didn't he start going hoarse a couple times?
Yeah,
didn't he say that in a couple interviews?
The way he is talking in this, like, Geralt is described to have like a really guttural, monotone sort of
raspy sound.
Raspy, kind of grunty voice, and Henry took that, but he also took from the game, the way the game sounded as well, and fused it both and made it into his own.
I can see that.
Yeah, I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah, I do like that because I've seen gameplay. I tried playing it a little bit myself at one point with Wild Hunt. And then hearing Henry sounding pretty much like the combination of the two from the book and the games, it's like perfect.
Yeah. So another one of the backlashes as well was with Anya Shalartra. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I'm terrible if I butcher it. But a lot of that was a back because they were wanting someone with like raven black hair, but like paler than pale, and she is a British stage actor, but she's also of Indian descent.
Right.
And a lot of the purists, as they say, I just call them a little bit racist. A lot of the purists, quote
They
unquote,
wanted raven hair and stark white skin.
Yeah, they wanted more towards the game with her, but Anya really, for me, sold it as Yen, especially the way she portrayed herself, and like even the way like she was carrying herself and talking and making herself look like she had a hunchback and everything. Like she really embodied where you could actually believe that she was a hunchback, and like the way she was talking and jetting her lip out a little bit more as well, talking more with her tongue instead of how she normally would talk in like a high British accent. She really sold that role, and it's one that I'm really appreciative about as well.
See, that's where I'm like, the more I watched her as Yen when we would rewatch it, the more she started to grow on me.
Yeah, and that's something too with like, I don't want to speak for her or anything, but Christy, the elusive Chris, like she was saying she hates Yen. Yen is terrible. She's a terrible person, but she loves Anya's portrayal. Like Anya made Chris actually start liking Yennefer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big step.
That is saying something. So out of the first 2 episodes, which one is your favorite and why?
Honestly, I would have to go with 4 marks.
4 marks?
Mostly the banter between Jaskier and Geralt.
Tossing coins to witchers.
That, but also seeing Yen coming into her own as she learns little by little.
Right.
That's also powerful.
Right. I would have to say for me it would also be 4 marks because Yen is my wife. She's my waifu.
Yeah.
Yen is my waifu.
This is true, folks. This is true.
She can murder me and I'd say thank you, ma'am.
Knowing you, you'd be like, thank you, ma'am. May I have another?
Yeah. I like this. Another crash.
Pulling a Thor.
Yeah. No, she's strictly Dickly with the Geralt.
And you're sad.
Sad face. Sad. Why are all the best people, all the best ladies out there actually just fictional? It's sad.
It's just like, why are all the best guys fictional?
like Geralt of Rivia. And she's drooling.
Hey, I mean...
Oh, God. That must be awkward for when Dad hears this.
Hey, he's gonna find out sooner or later.
He knows. But, yeah, I do have to say that 4 marks is my favorite, but so far, out of the 2, my favorite moment has to be the battle with Renfrey. Like, that fight choreo, how they had it at, like, 120 frames per second. Just doing the give and take back and forth. Like, damn.
Not just that, I've actually seen the behind the scenes filming that specific fight scene. And just watching them film it. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Because, like, we saw with, like, with Birds of Prey, with the last one, how
Margot did
all of her own stunts.
Right.
Henry also did mostly, if not all, of his own stuff.
Exactly.
Like, that's a lot of core and cardio and just... Especially with the swords too. Like, even though they were fake, they were dulled down. They were actual metal, but they were dulled down to...
Yeah, but some of the blades were actually cut in half.
Yes.
Because when they went for editing, they could always superimpose the rest of the sword as well as the graphics of ripping someone's head off and all the blood splatter.
With that walk, that initial, like, they had the cameraman with the Steadicam going through, and that it was 2-minute choreo,
right?
Just a full 2-minute choreo scene, and it was one shot, one take.
Yeah, that I did hear.
Oh, buddy, like, how? Teach me your ways. I'm fat and flabby. Teach me your ways.
We're marshmallows. we're marshmallows.
Ways. Yeah, marshmallows. We're the Stay Puff Marshmallow Men. The stay-at-home Puff Marshmallow Men.
Yes.
So far with just the first 2 episodes, what would you rate The Witcher? Out of 10 coins from Jaskier, how many would you flip?
10.
Toss to The Witcher?
10.
10?
If I had more, I'd toss more.
The Witcher up on that stripper pole. Tossing coins.
There's a meme. If those of you haven't seen the meme is Geralt as a stripper. And they're tossing coins. One lands on his ass.
I don't know who drew that.
I don't know either, but we'll probably put a link to that meme in the description box. So if you haven't seen it, you can see it and
it's fantastic.
Get a laugh.
Well, anyway, we will be back with the next one. Hopefully my TLDR will be just a little bit shorter because I went a little too in-depth with the TLDR on the 2.
Yes.
If you stayed to the end, thank you, because this is a longer podcast.
Yes.
Longer than we're used to, especially since it's the first couple ones that we're putting out there. But we will be going through more of The Witcher with the season. We'll also be going through other films, games, stuff about the world that isn't about the COVID-19 to get your mind off of the COVID-19 while you stay at home. And just stay safe out there. Wash your hands. You don't want Kikimora juices all over. You want to wash your hands and rub your chamomile all over the Witcher's lovely bottom. But yeah, we will be back, and we will see you next time. In the immortal words of the ever-elusive Christina,
Hail Satan and Cthulhu.
And
see ya.
This is annoying yet. Probably. Bye. Bye.